The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello, welcome everyone to the July National Farm to School Network topical webinar, Farm to Summer. We're going to give it just a few moments for people to join on the line and then we'll get started. Welcome everybody. Thanks so much for joining us on this summer day for our July National Farm to School Network Trending Topics webinar, Farm to Summer. A few housekeeping notes before we get started. This webinar will be recorded and archived for future viewing in the National Farm to School Network resource database. You'll also receive a link to access that recording in a follow-up email that you'll get in just a couple of days that will also include resources and links from our presenters today. All of you attendees are in listen-only mode. Please do think of questions that you'd like to our panelists to respond to, and enter those questions in your question box throughout the webinar today. We'll have plenty of time for a question and answer and discussion with our panelists at the end of the call. So please remember to be entering your questions throughout the webinar today. Welcome again. My name is Lacey Stevens. I'm the Program Manager for the National Farm to School Network, and I'll be your host and moderator for today's webinar focusing on Farm to Summer. We've got a great packed agenda with a lot of information and innovation happening across the country in Farm to Summer. So we're going to start today's webinar with some highlights of what's happening across the country with NFSN partners and their work in Farm to Summer. And then we'll hone in and we'll hear from USDA Office of Community Food Systems about their Farm to Summer work and resources. And then we'll see what's happening in Massachusetts with a Massachusetts case study, Summer Meals at the Market. And then finally, we'll hear about an innovative program in Kentucky, the Kentucky Fruit and Vegetable Incentive Program. And then finally wrap up with some questions and answers. So we're really excited to have you here with us with today's webinar. The National Farm to School Network does host these topical trending topics webinars on the first Thursday of the month. Here are our upcoming webinars. Next month in August, we have a very special Farm to Early Care and Education webinar focusing on Indigenous foods and early care and education. And then in September, we'll look at farm to school policy. So links to these upcoming webinars will be sent in that follow-up email so you can make sure to register and join us. So let's get started with some context for our Farm to Summer conversation. We'll be diving into Farm to Summer, and that is bringing farm to school into the USDA Summer Food Service Program. The Summer Food Service Program ensures that low-income children across the country continue to receive those nutritious meals even when school is not in session, and it aims to ensure that no child goes hungry during the summer. This program provides no-cost meals to children 18 and under at sites all across the country in low-income areas and communities. Last year, over 3 million children were served by this program in the summer. In addition to serving those meals, summer food service sites also offer plenty of education and enrichment activities. So as you can see, the setup for the summer food service program really leaves a lot of opportunity for all of these farm to school core elements. So looking at how these core elements fit into Farm to Summer, we know that when we talk about Farm to School, implementation looks different in every school and every program, but almost always includes one of these core elements. And the same goes for Farm to Summer programming, which includes all of the local procurement, the gardening, and the food, nutrition, and agriculture education. And as we'll hear from our speakers today, Farm to Summer is a great way to fit in all of these elements. So from taking advantage of the abundance of seasonal produce for procurement to using summer food service programs as an opportunity to utilize and maintain school gardens while school is out, and using those education and enrichment opportunities as we talked about for food, agriculture, and nutrition education. So why is this such a valuable opportunity? We know when we talk about Farm to School, we talk about this triple win for kids, farmers, and communities, and certainly the same applies for Farm to Summer. Kids are winning because they have that continued access to healthy local foods and the learning opportunities associated with Farm to Summer. Farmers have that additional market during their peak growing season. And of course, communities have that win by addressing that summer hunger gap and, of course, those economic benefits of investing in local community food systems. So we're honing in on just a few really stellar examples of farm to summer initiatives. There are some great advances and initiatives happening all across the country. So our partners in Alabama, for example, have 40 summer food service sites that are providing over 2,000 locally sourced snacks each week. And those children and families have the opportunity to purchase local foods at on-site farmer markets. In Connecticut, sites across the state are offering squash in meals and squash-related activities in the Put Some Squash in Your Summer campaign. In Iowa, where this great poster is from, they are implementing the Root for Radishes campaign, where sites can get TA and mini grants to help host and promote local food events. In Montana, Harvest of the Month sites are now eligible, Summer Food Service sites are now eligible to implement their Harvest of the Month program, where this beautiful poster comes from. And in Oregon, the Oregon Farm to School and School Garden Network is providing TA and training to summer sites to help advance their use of local foods. And finally, in Utah, sites are partnering with the Dairy Council to have Farm Day with animals and food activities. So as you can see, interest in farm to summer is really proliferating, and we're really excited to hear about the how and the why from our presenters today to advance farm to summer across the country. So we've got a great panel today to help us learn about this. First, we'll be hearing from Erin Kennedy Heisom, a program analyst with USDA Office of Community Food Systems. Erin is a public health dietitian with over 10 years experience in improving food access and security among vulnerable populations. Currently, Erin is a program analyst for the Office of Community Food Systems at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, where she supports the use of local and traditional foods in the National School Lunch and Breakfast programs, the Summer Food Service Program, and the Child and Adult Care Food Program. Next, we'll be hearing from Rachel Harb, who is a program specialist with the Massachusetts Farm to School. Massachusetts Farm to School is a statewide organization that strengthens local farms and fisheries and promotes healthy communities by increasing local food purchasing and education at schools. She leads farm to school trainings across the state and is the lead organizer for MFTS's professional development programs such as the Massachusetts Farm to Sea to School Conference and the newly established Massachusetts Farm to School Institute. And then finally, we'll hear from Kate McDonald, Kentucky Kids Eat campaign coordinator from the Kentucky Association of Food Banks. Kate works to enhance food security for Kentucky's kids through statewide food security initiatives that improve, promote, and expand Kentucky's participation in federal nutrition programs. She developed a needs assessment determining the campaign's impact on the federal nutrition programs and meets with policymakers, government agencies, and direct service providers to promote the campaign's efforts. Also on the line, we have Kate's colleague, Tina Garland from the Kentucky Department of Agriculture, who will be available to answer additional questions about the work happening in Kentucky. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Erin to get us started.
Thanks, Lacey, and good afternoon, everyone. I am honored to be a part of today's webinar. As mentioned, I am Erin Heisom, and I'm a program analyst in the Office of Community Food Systems. Next slide, please. So before we get started, I wanted to share a little bit about my office and our role within USDA. And as you can see on this slide, the Section 18 of the Richard B. Russell National School Lunch Act was amended to include a comprehensive farm-to-school program. And that word comprehensive is really important, so I'll come back to it. But we have three main roles you can see: grant funding, providing training and technical assistance, and disseminating research and data. And the reason why I like to emphasize that comprehensive farm-to-school program is because we work to integrate farm-to-school principles throughout all child nutrition programs, not just school breakfast, not just school lunch, but also child and adult care food program, and of course the summer meals program. Next slide, please. So my office's long-term vision is for every child in every child nutrition program to have access to a local food item every day. Again, this means we are working to expand farm-to-school principles throughout all of FNS, including summer meals. While we often have a direct line of communication to state agencies and we regularly work to build state agency capacity, we also directly touch program operators in a number of different ways, from the training and technical assistance work we do to our grant program. Next slide, please. So let's get into the meat of today's webinar, really farm to summer. And when we say farm to summer, we really view it as that natural extension of the farm to school model, just like Lacey was saying. So it works to connect sponsors to local food producers. And there's numerous goals, but the three main or big goals that we like to see is, one, serving healthy, fresh foods to children while school is out. Two would be to support those local economies throughout the summer when much of the country is at its peak agricultural season. And lastly, to provide food and agriculture-related opportunities to children during the summer months, right? So we build that capacity in the school year with agriculture and garden-based education, and we want that to continue in the summer months. There are two main tenets to farm to summer: local sourcing and that garden and agriculture education. So starting with local sourcing, there are a variety of different ways summer sponsors are purchasing local foods for their meal program. There is no one-size-fits-all model, and many sponsors utilize a variety of procurement methods to serve the most local food possible. They really want to take advantage of the summer bounty and the summer harvest. So local foods may come direct from a farmer or farmer's market. They may come through an intermediary source, such as a distributor, a food hub, a co-op, or a food service management company, or even from a school or community garden. So we're seeing a lot of summer sponsors take advantage of gardens in the summer months and really incorporating those products into their meal program. Next slide, please. The second piece that we mentioned is that education, food, agriculture, and nutrition education component. We know that in general, summer meal sites that offer activities tend to attract more children. They are better at engaging community partners, and they enhance their sustainability, their program sustainability from year to year. And there are a variety of different food and agriculture-related activities that can support farm to summer programs. So one of the big things that we see, as I previously mentioned, is sponsors and sites taking advantage of gardens and working to ensure that those gardens are maintained throughout the summer months. Oftentimes we'll hear that schools worry about who is going to manage the garden over the summer months. Well, if that school is an area eligible location or has a summer meals program, this is a really great opportunity to maintain that garden and provide education. We're seeing other sponsors and sites conduct taste tests of local foods or offer seasonal recipe contests, cooking demonstrations. Some host farmers to come and talk to the students or the children that attend the meal sites. Others take farmers market field trips. And recently, we've seen an increased interest in what we're calling edible meal sites. So that is serving or selecting a summer meal site in conjunction with an agricultural center, such as a farmer's market or a school or community garden. And having those agriculture centers, the market, the garden, being a summer meal site in itself. It's a great way to not only expose children and teens to local agriculture, but it also is an opportunity to source those products directly from the meal site. In this picture here on your screen is from a school sponsor in Maryland, a school site in Maryland. The sponsor hosted a pop-up farmer's market in the school parking lot, and they featured a local farmer who sold to them throughout the school year. So they had that year-round relationship with this farmer. The sponsor also partnered with multiple community organizations, such as the library, the health department, and local nonprofits like local anti-hunger groups to offer engaging enrichment activities for the children. So there were farmers market scavenger hunts and food-focused book readings and various other activities that could attract and engage the children. So the kids got a locally sourced meal where food was sourced directly from the farmer as well as through their normal distributor, local items. They were provided agriculture education, and their parents could shop at the market, at the pop-up market itself while the children ate. Next slide, please. So I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about how there's really a role for everyone. So whether you are a state agency or you are a summer sponsor, I'm going to spend some time talking about those two different entities, and we know there are a lot of variety of other community partners involved in Farm to Summer, but just focus on those two entities for a little bit to see what are they doing to enhance Farm to Summer. State agencies are really in unique positions to promote and expand farm to summer efforts. While they are not directly responsible for purchasing foods or planning activities, the state agency's support of these efforts really goes a long way in growing this program. So if you're a state agency and you're like, I don't buy food, or I don't select activities for sites, there's still a lot you can do. And you see on the screen here is just a few examples of what we've seen as being successful strategies that various state agencies have adopted. So the first is to include farm to summer in all administrative trainings, meetings, and summer debriefs. And really what we're trying to get at here is embedding farm to summer principles in your normal operating procedures. So we don't want farm to summer to necessarily be something special or you do a one-off event for. As you're doing a summer administrative training, incorporate local procurement strategies. Or as you're hosting a summer work group meeting, invite your local ag community to the meeting to meet with sponsors. Really embed it through everything that you're doing as the administering agency of summer meals. The next strategy is to market and promote. So state agencies are leaders in sharing best practices and spreading the word. And they can do this in so many ways, right? They can feature farm to summer sponsors on their website, through newsletters and press releases, highlight them during meetings or conferences, share success on social media. We always encourage you to submit stories to our e-letter, The Dirt, which I'll touch on in a little bit. We've seen some states that create statewide recognition programs that acknowledge sponsors who serve high quality, locally sourced meals and ingredients. And lastly, I kind of already mentioned this, but state agencies are also perfectly positioned to convene various groups for the purpose of promoting local agriculture and activities in summer meals. So does your state already have a summer partnership or a summer work group meeting? So are you already looking to increase participation or access some way you already convene? Well, are there agricultural groups involved in that meeting? Are SFA, Future Farmers of America, invited? County extension offices, master gardeners, did they participate in those summer work group meetings? If you're located in the Department of Education, do you collaborate with the Department of Agriculture? Next slide, please. Just want to do a brief reminder that USDA FNS supports and encourages the use of state administrative expenses and state administrative funds for high-level, state-level farm-to-school work. So if you are a state agency and you receive these funds, it is allowable to hire a state-level farm-to-school coordinator who maybe works on farm-to-school and farm-to-summer year-round, or create farm-to-summer guidance materials, or host trainings and conferences related to farm-to-summer with those funds. And more information on this can be found on our website. Next slide, please. And we're just going to take a moment, besides the fact that I love this child in his picture, just to transition now from state agencies to see how sponsors are bringing the farm to their summer programs. Next slide, please. So we've already talked about many of these strategies, and I'm sure that our next speakers will provide even more tips and best practices and ways to really embed farm to summer into your operations. But just to review, some of the successes that we're seeing is serving meals at edible sites. So again, partnering your summer meal site with a farmer's market or a garden. Of course, purchasing local foods and incorporating agriculture education. And then hosting promotional events in conjunction with your local agriculture community. So we often see summer sponsors, summer sites looking to market and promote and conduct outreach and really increase awareness within their community about their program. A great way to do this is if you're having a kickoff event, have it at that community garden. It's a beautiful backdrop. It'll provide a lot of pretty pictures for press releases and websites and social media. Or if you're having a spike event mid-season, maybe do it at the farmer's market, or invite a farmer that you source products from to come and talk and share their experience, or invite your state secretary of agriculture to come and talk. This can draw press, and it also works to increase awareness of your program and awareness of the fact that you are doing farm to summer. As a reminder, National Farmers Market Week is one of those great promotional weeks and opportunities to do such a thing. That's August 5th through 11th this year. Next slide, please. If you're not aware, USDA does have a recognition program for summer sponsors who serve high quality meals. It's called USDA's Turn Up the Beat. It's for both summer food service and seamless summer sponsors. And serving local foods and offering seasonal activities are categories within this recognition program. So you can look for more information on how to apply in the fall of 2018. We'll release that application. But if you want to look to connect with previous winners, go onto the Turn Up the Beat website, and you can see who has received gold, silver, and bronze awards near you. Next slide, please. Another tool is our capacity builder. If you're not familiar with this is an interactive map that allows users to visualize layers of information so they can be really helpful when you're looking to identify new sites or where you're going to serve a site for next year. And as you can see on the left here, you can layer information such as farmers markets and Turn Up the Beat, winners, and former USDA grantees. Next slide, please. Talking about the grant program, just a really quick reminder that our Farm to School grant program is open to school-based summer sites. So if you operate one or multiple school-based summer sites and you're interested in our grant program, check back into our website in the fall of 2018 and we'll release our next RFA. Next slide, please. We also have a variety of resources on our website. You see our Farm to Summer fact sheet on the left, our Procuring Local Foods guide on the right. This guide is really helpful if you are looking to start or expand your local procurement and local purchasing efforts. It walks you through all the rules and regulations in very easy to understand language, and it has a section for Farm to Summer. Next slide, please. And I always like to say that our best resources are each other. So our national office staff, you see myself, my colleague, Maika Sanderson, who oversees the grant program, as well as our director, Erin Healy. We are always available to answer any questions you have or connect you with people in your state or region who can help you build or expand your Farm to Summer program. Our information is all available on the website. And I think next slide. Our regional leads. So if you are not already familiar with our regional leads, we have a lead, Farm to School lead in every region of the country. They're there to be your first line of defense to answer any of your questions. They will come out and visit your sites. They will help promote it. They will provide you with resources and connect you with others. They're a really excellent, excellent resource. Please reach out to them, develop relationships with them. They're here to help you. Their information is also available on our website. And I think I have one more. Last but not least, if you are not already subscribed to our e-letter, The Dirt, please do so. It is a wealth of information, sharing best practices, and talks everything from farm to school, farm to summer, farm to CCE, farm to childcare. So feel free to subscribe to that to stay in touch with us. And if you have a great story of what you're doing with regard to farm to summer, please let us know. We would love to feature you. That's all I have today, and I'm looking forward to hearing from the rest of our speakers. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Erin. Great to hear all those approaches and suggestions for everyone involved in farm to summer and how they can be engaged to promote it. As you do have questions for Erin, please remember to type those in the questions box, and she'll have some opportunities to answer those at the end of the session today. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Rachel so we can learn more about what's happening in Massachusetts. Rachel.
Thanks. So I'm going to be taking a closer look at summer meals at the market. It's very much an emerging program in Massachusetts. So we're looking at just initial findings, but I'll be able to talk through some of the opportunities and the lessons learned of establishing new programs to offer summer meals at farmers markets. Next slide, please. Summer markets are a really interesting and advantageous partner to have for summer meals. They, I think, can be a really good supplement to summer meal programs that are offered throughout the week, Monday to Friday. Meals at the market can occur in the evening time, sometimes, or like weekends, which are all allowable under the summer food service program. And I think can be an opportunity to cross-promote all kinds of programs and raise awareness for what foods are in season, and introduce folks to new ways to find local food, both at the market and in their meals. Next slide, please. Actually, next slide, please. So just in Massachusetts alone, there's a lot of potential to expand this idea. So back in 2016, Mass Farm to School mapped out all of the sites that where there is both a farmer's market and they qualify for to be an open site for summer meals. And so open sites are probably the most advantageous for a summer meal program at the market, because that means that any child under 18 years old will be eligible for a free meal at that site. So all of the kind of orange triangles here are areas where they would be eligible to have meals at the market offered free to all children. And just the few green triangles there are the ones that have started it already. So there's tons of potential to increase the meals at the market offerings in Massachusetts. And I imagine every state there's potential. Next slide, please. So I want to walk through some of the lessons learned and some things that we consider best practices for those who are thinking about approaching a market with this opportunity. So one of the most important things is having a site supervisor who's familiar with the rules of the summer food service program. So this could be volunteer staff, it could be the market manager for the farmers market, but more likely you'll want to have a separate sponsor who is going to have a trained staff available to enforce the rules and mark off who's getting meals. One thing that can be helpful is engaging teens. So teens are definitely an underserved category or demographic in summer meal programs. And so having teens on board to help put on the summer meal program at the market, I think can help reduce the stigma, can help bring their friends in. At the very least, the teens who are helping out with the meals themselves will get a meal. Signage, so having clear signage that designates the summer meal site within the farmer's market is important. This is a stigma reducing measure in itself, so that folks don't have to wander around looking and wondering where the meal site is. I think a good practice is to have lawn signs, clear banner, making it just very obvious. Here's a good picture on this slide. Programming, so just as Erin covered already, having activities that can attract kids, teens, and families to the site that supplement the offering is really helpful for getting kids there. And for incorporating local foods, taste tests, cooking demos, and even a scavenger hunt around the market can be a good approach. Next slide, please. Having the right location can help bring foot traffic to your summer meal site. So probably the gold standard is having a designated tent that's a part of the summer meal program, a part of the farmer's market. It doesn't feel disjointed, like it's its own element. It should also probably have a table and chairs to help enforce the congregate feeding rule, where all kids who take a meal have to eat the meal on site. And so that's something that the site supervisor would be monitoring. So a longer window for offering meals can be helpful. As you know, families will be coming in and out of the market, so it can be nice to offer, you can offer up to 2 meals in a day, or rather 2 offerings in a day. It can be a breakfast and lunch, it can be a lunch and a snack, or it can be a dinner even. And so you might be catching the families at different times in the day. Having good communications and outreach is very important. Making sure that families are aware that this is happening so that you can have the most participation possible. We recommend sending flyers home with kids in the schools before the school year ends. And in some cases, if it's a brand new offering canvassing in the community can make sense, and approaching local businesses and asking if they can post posters and signs to advertise the program. In Massachusetts, we also have a Summer Eats app that nonprofit Project Bread puts up, and it's a way for families to find a summer site that's closest to them. Meals at the Market can offer interesting and exciting cross-promoting programs. For one thing, if you have a weekly market, then you're only offering meals on that one day, so you can be cross-promoting other summer feeding sites, camps at schools, or other community organizations who are offering meals. You can make information available for families who come to the market. And sometimes there will be families who can benefit both from, let's say, double up dollars at the market and the summer meals there. So there can be cross-promoting with libraries and any other program that that provides information to families. Next slide, please. In Massachusetts, there's been new policy where so families who use SNAP or food stamp benefits can double up their dollars at any participating farmers market, mobile market, farm stand, or CSA or other programs. And so in Massachusetts, we found that there's cross-promotion potential there, that families can be doubling up their dollars at the market as well as receiving a free meal for their kids. Next slide, please. Just one example, but in Greenfield, Massachusetts, their farmers market was on a Saturday, and the Greenfield Public Schools were the sponsors. They also ran a Monday through Friday summer meal program, and they were able to figure out a way to have some of their staff prepare the meals for the Saturday market in advance. So they prepared it on Friday, stored the meals, and then had staff attend the farmers market and serve the meals on that Saturday. It happened to work out that their staff were available and looking for additional hours for Saturday, so that worked well for them. In other cases, a weekend could be difficult to find staff who are used to working in a school. So it really will depend program to program how it gets rolled out. The Greenfield Market also offered fresh fruit tastings at their summer meals sites, and this was a way to establish a partnership between the farmers at the market and the summer meal sites. So, so that was one opportunity for linking the local food with the meal program. Next slide, please. So just a few points to figure out whether your farmer's market might be a good fit for summer meals. If the market overlaps with meal times, that's helpful. That it's located in a place that has high foot traffic. Maybe it's a market that's well established and has been going on for years. Also is easily accessible on foot. That can be extremely helpful. If you have a market manager who is willing and excited to undertake a new program that can expand meal offerings to kids, that's helpful. There probably should be some math and some figuring out of how much participation you're going to need to break even, because it needs to be a profitable program. So again, this is where marketing promotion really comes into play, and figuring out whether the market is located in an open site versus a closed site. So your state agriculture agency might be able to provide a full list of the farmers markets and the market manager contacts, which if you're looking to get started, then that might be a good place to start. That's the kind of relationship that we have with our agency in Massachusetts. Next slide, please. And just really quickly, but other factors to consider is when and where the meals are going to be prepared. Are they going to be stored? And when they're at the site, making sure that they're properly packed in coolers and maintaining safe temperatures. Could there be potential allies and partners? Someone who can store the meals or provide volunteers to help staff the site, or recruiting partners to provide programming. At the Greenfield Market, they regularly brought in performers such as musicians and even a juggling performance. And it's something that, the sponsor and the farmers market staff didn't always have capacity to do. So bringing in someone from the outside could be really helpful. In our experience in Massachusetts, incorporating local ingredients wasn't the primary goal initially. That ended up being a longer term goal. What it did was it established better relationships between the meal providers and the farmers at the market. So it doesn't have to happen right away, but it can be a goal to sort out the logistics of putting local ingredients from the market right into the meals. Next slide, please. And just on a final note, in Massachusetts, we run a Harvest of the Month program that do align with the summer months. So strawberries, cucumbers, and peaches we highlight, which all could be featured through taste tests at the summer meal site. And we also provide nutrition education materials, and this can be helpful for introducing kids and families to new flavors that are in season that they can then take and walk around the farmers market, see them served at the vendor tables, and hopefully will be leading for them to buy even more of those products now that they've tried it. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Rachel. It's great to hear about that innovative program. We appreciate you sharing all those tips and hope that it creates opportunity to grow this work in other states. Now we're going to move south to Kentucky, and I'm going to turn it over to Kate to talk about the Kentucky Grown Vegetable Incentive Program.
Hi, everybody. I'm Kate McDonald, and I coordinate the No Kid Hungry Kentucky campaign, known here as the Kentucky Kids Eat campaign. I'm filling in for our partner today, Tina Garland, at the Kentucky Department of Agriculture. I work at the Kentucky Association of Food Banks, and we partnered with the Department of Agriculture on many projects, one in particular being the Kentucky Grown Fruit and Vegetable Incentive Program, known to us as KVIP. Next slide, please. So the Department of Agriculture is a primary partner in the KY Kids Eat Coalition, and Ag Commissioner Ryan Quarles has identified our campaign as a key priority for his hunger initiative. Kentucky Kids Eat campaign's vision is that every child has access to nutritious meals 365 days a year, and close to 200,000 kids here are living below the poverty line. And Feeding America's most recent research shows that there are 8 counties in Kentucky where more than 1 in 3 children are food insecure. So food insecurity is a huge issue, and as I know all of you know, summer is a really vulnerable time. The Commonwealth has a really rich agricultural history and a statewide network of farms, and so we have the resources to feed hungry people, but we haven't always had the infrastructure to connect farms to our needy neighbors. So this partnership is really working to solve those 2 problems. Next slide, please. So last June, members of our coalition began discussing the economic impact of summer meals on the state of Kentucky. And our key partners in this discussion were the Department of Agriculture, the Department of Education, and the Governor's Office of Ag Policy. And we found that around $9 million in purchased food comes into the state for summer meals alone. And that was, and there was a lot of great interest in knowing how much of this is or could be coming from Kentucky farms. And an informal search from the Department of Education found that most summer sponsors in Kentucky, which is actually primarily school systems here, use large food suppliers like Vexo to source produce for summer meals, and most of that produce was coming from outside of the state. So that's kind of where the idea for KVIP began to evolve. Next slide. So it's our shared vision that we could feed kids nutritious summer meals and have that effort support local Kentucky farms and the economy of the Commonwealth. There's an obvious barrier that we'll discuss in a second, but that's really where the spark began. We saw a lot of potential for supporting Kentucky farms while also feeding hungry kids. Next slide. So the biggest barrier to this is obviously funding. Most sponsors we've spoken to, and I know many of you know that there's limited funding at a lot of school systems and nonprofits for purchased product in the summertime. And as you all know as well, local produce tends to be a bit more expensive. So the question we had for ourselves was, how do we incentivize summer meal sponsors to purchase this local produce? And the answer for us was more funding for them. So in the fall of 2017, the Kentucky Association of Food Banks applied for funding from the Kentucky Agricultural Development Fund. Next slide. So to give you a little background about where this funding is coming from, Kentucky uses tobacco resettlement funds to support the Kentucky Agricultural Development Fund. And we were awarded late December 2017, $185,000 in state funding for this pilot project. And support from the Department of Agriculture and Commissioner Quarles was critical to this being funded. And it was a pretty easy sell because it's really a win-win for Kentucky kids and for local growers. Next slide. So I'm sure you're all wondering, how does this work? So for every $3 a summer sponsor spends at a Kentucky farm for Kentucky grown produce, Kentucky Kids Eat will provide up to $1 in additional funding. So KVIP was introduced to summer sponsors at the Department of Education Summer Meal Summit in February, and logistical training was given by Tina Garland. So anyone who's interested in knowing a little bit more how that functioned. And enrollment, there was a small application process. We only turned away one organization that was actually not approved as a summer sponsor. So for the most part, if you enrolled and you were approved by the Department of Education, you were also enrolled in KVIP. So that was open for the entire spring until mid-May. And throughout the spring, all summer food service program sponsors in Kentucky were trained by the Department of Education and the Department of Agriculture, which was primarily Tina, to procure local produce from farms through micro purchasing, and went a little bit further in teaching them how to utilize this incentive program. So once all of the sponsors who were interested were chosen and notified, Tina connected them to potential farm partners in their county, and from there, the summer started. Next slide. So the Kentucky Association of Food Banks is tracking the expenditures of sponsors at Kentucky farms on a monthly basis. To receive the KVIP funding at the end of the summer, sponsors will submit to Tina at the Department of Agriculture a claim supported by the receipts or invoices for the produce procured from Kentucky farms. And the receipts are due at the same time that their summer meal reimbursements are due. So in Kentucky, that's by the 15th of the following month. So all of receipts are due from our sponsors to us on the 15th of every month. So what they'll do is they fill out a quick form on KY Kids Eat website, just detailing which farms they worked with and how much the receipts are worth. And then they send a copy of those receipts to Tina at the Department of Ag, and then the two of us work together to make sure that we have everything that we need. So all this is to say that the funding and payment to our summer sponsors will actually happen at the end of September once the summer food service program is over. Next slide. So about a quarter, 51 summer sponsors are participating in the pilot. And of the $185,000, a little over $160,000 has been requested by summer sponsors. So we have about $20,000 available for midsummer request. As this is a pilot, we understand that predicting how much sponsors were going to spend on local produce was a bit of a guessing game for them. So having this available midsummer request funding has actually been very helpful for some sponsors that have been spending more than they thought they would. And these sponsors are located in 47 of the 120 Kentucky counties, and they're really all over the state. So we have, our larger cities are covered, very rural areas are covered, Eastern Kentucky and Appalachia is covered. So KVIP is reaching almost every area of the state. And the average daily participation for the 51 sponsors participating is up to 120,000 meals a day. So up to 120,000 meals served each day this summer have Kentucky grown produce included in those meals. So that's really exciting work. Next slide, please. So this program has been truly a collaboration between state agencies and the Kentucky Association of Food Banks. We'll be releasing a report about the results from this summer and plan to publish information for growers about the types of produce summer sponsors prefer when procuring for summer meals in 2019. I really think this is just the beginning of a really wonderful partnership, and there's a lot of opportunities to evolve and to grow. If we're funded again, I would really love to have more nutrition education program worked into summer sites that are receiving fresh produce. That's something that's been recommended this summer, but not required. But I'd love to see more of that. And another hope would be to expand this program into the after-school meals realm, so that a lot of these sponsors that are doing summer and after school could get some incentives to prefer local growers. And really our hope is that, about 40% of these sponsors had worked with farmers before. So we know that the majority of summer sponsors have never procured local produce from a farmer. So it's really our hope that this is a way for them to make connections that will extend well past the summer months and into the school year, or for CACFP at-risk meals. Next slide. So just to say again, this has all been a collaboration, and is all part of the Kentucky Kids Eat Coalition, which is represented by the Department of Agriculture, Department of Education, the First Lady's Office, and a few other large nonprofits and state entities that have really helped us make all of this happen. Thanks so much. I think that's it. Yep, and so if you've got questions, these are Tina and my contact information.
Great. Thank you so much, Kate. Great to hear about this program and exciting to see it in process this summer. So if you have questions for Kate or any of our presenters, please enter those into the question box now. We've got a few questions rolling in here. Kate, I'd love to start with the first question for you. There was a note on your slides regarding those sites working with distributors. How do you manage those sites working with distributors? And kind of an adjunct question to that, are you finding that most of the sites are purchasing directly from farmers for this program, or are they purchasing through another party?
So that's a great question. So in the application for this program, we had some pretty explicit language that spoke about connecting directly with farmers. So this summer we can only reimburse. So let's say that you purchased $1,000 worth of strawberries from a farm, and we can give you a third of that funding. That can only be coming directly from the farm. So the kind of workaround we've worked with the Governor's Office of Ag Policy, if someone's working with a distributor, as long as the distributor can connect with the Department of Agriculture or myself about the true cost of those products, we'll be able to give them the full funding for the full KVIP funding. But for this summer, we haven't been able, we won't be able to give people a KVIP reimbursement if they're going solely through distributors without that knowledge, without the knowledge of what those products, the market cost. Tina, does that make sense?
Yes, that's correct, Kate.
Great, thanks for that clarification. I'm sure that's something of interest to a lot of programs, understanding that's different distribution networks.
Yeah, and I will say too, that's something that we're definitely looking in our report to the board in December. We'll be sharing, that concern with them, and that might change in the future. But that's just something that we couldn't work around for the summer. So
great. So next, I have a question for Rachel. Rachel, how does Massachusetts advertise the HIP program to local residents?
This is something that's mostly done through our partner organization, Project Bread. They're a nonprofit who, one of their branches is like working with communities and schools to offer the summer meal programs and breakfast programs. And I actually think that's like that organization does the majority of the outreach for the HIP program.
Great. So it sounds like those partnerships are really important there.
Yeah.
We have a question coming in for Erin. Erin, could you talk about the difference between summer food service program versus seamless summer, and how farm to summer might look different in those different programs?
So the seamless summer option is really when schools operate essentially NSLP, the National School Lunch Program, throughout the summer. So it's usually occurring at summer education, summer learning things through the school program, whereas SFSP is open to a more variety of sponsors. So it could be school-based sponsors, nonprofit community organizations, maybe local governments. And, farm to summer, really, it looks different, not necessarily depending on whether you're SSO or SFSP, but by the individual site and the sponsor itself, based off capacity and feasibility and available resources, and most importantly, your individual goal and what you're trying to achieve. But the main difference between SSO and SFSP is seamless summer option is predominantly school districts that are operating the National School Lunch Program throughout the summer months.
Great. Thanks for helping us understand that. I know we're all kind of at different levels in understanding these opportunities in summer, so it's really helpful background for us. We've got another question for Kate in Kentucky. Did the funding and the grant provide for additional staff time for the administrative side, or was the funding just for those additional reimbursements?
So the funding, one, I wish, but the funding is just for the reimbursements. We were really lucky to get the $185,000, and I think part of that may have been that our application didn't include any overhead. So it's all for summer sponsors.
Great, thanks. Another question for Rachel about the market meals program. Rachel, can you very briefly kind of walk us through what the logistics look like for meals at the farmers market site? Kind of maybe a specific example of who the sponsor is, where the food's prepared, how it's get there, and that kind of logistical side.
Sure. So with the Greenfield example, the sponsor is the school food service department, and the site is the farmers market. So there were staff from the schools who were the sort of site supervisors. The food service director was there, and several staff. They would prepare the meals in the school kitchens where temperatures were properly monitored and serve safe certified and all that. And we're able to pack the meals into coolers, monitor the temperatures at the site and be able to distribute the meals right at the market.
Great, thank you. Again, sounds like a lot of those partnerships and connections. So I think this question I might like to hear from all of you from your different perspectives. We have a question. A member said that some of their local smaller growers are intimidated by the perceived requirements for producing food for any kind of feeding program. So I'm wondering if you could each talk from your perspectives about what the requirements are for producing foods, if that's the same for the National School Lunch Program as it is for the Summer Food Service Program, and if you are seeing producers seeing that as a barrier and how producers are overcoming that barrier. So let's start with Kate and hear about that from in Kentucky.
Sure, actually, and I might bounce this over to Tina because she works directly with farmers a lot, so she'll have a better input than me, I believe. Tina, are you still there?
Yes, I am. And that's a great question. And we continue to educate our farmers by having and encouraging producer meetings and walking them through the procurement process. We do encourage them to connect with the University of Kentucky and go through their training called Produce Best Practice Training, which is in place of the earlier GAP education training that they used to receive. So, and with that, and, walking that producer, hand in hand and encouraging them to sit down with their food service directors and extension and other leaders to connect, have that, break that language barrier from what the producer needs, from what and how he or she grows, to what the food service director needs. And we have found that just that continued training really, really is so important, and just daily technical assistance.
Great, thank you, Tina. Kate, Rachel, how about you? Do you have any perspectives from Massachusetts on how local smaller farmers are being supported to become producers for school food programs or child nutrition programs?
Sure, and speaking specifically about the market, I think this is kind of what I was getting at, that when summer meals are beginning to be offered at farmers market programs, that maybe initially having the food from the market served into the meals isn't necessarily, you don't have to start there. I think it's a really great place to start conversations and build relationships and have an exchange of ideas about the requirements, and building up to partnerships that might extend into the school year potentially. It's just getting the food to a kitchen where things can be properly monitored and washed is definitely a best practice.
Great, thanks, Rachel. And Erin, finally, from the national perspective, do you have any input on that connectivity, connecting smaller local farmers to summer food service programs in particular, and any resources you'd like to share around that?
Sure. So I will say, for food safety regulations and requirements from a national perspective, we don't require GAP certification. Now, state and local municipalities may have stricter, more stringent food safety requirements. We obviously are always promoting food safety and working with our child nutrition program operators to teach them how they can learn about food safety beyond just a requirement or a certification. So that's one aspect. I would encourage anyone who hasn't attended Produce Safety University yet to maybe contact their state agency and express interest in that. That's a really great week-long training that educates child nutrition program operators, food service directors on produce safety, and what should they be looking for in the conversations they should be having with farmers, and particularly small and medium-sized farmers who may not have the certification. So just one of those conversations. I will echo the previous speakers in that, really kind of facilitating communication between the program operator and the farmer, and doing it well in advance of when you are going to be serving meals or even operating the program. So From a national perspective, we've seen a lot of success with buyer-grower meetings that are maybe hosted in January or February, when maybe a farmer may have more time, they might be more available for a producer to attend, and the school system or the program operators are starting to think about their summer programming and gear up for summer programming. We also, on a national level are looking to increase our resources and technical assistance to producer groups. So we have been engaging more with departments of agriculture, whether or not they administer the child nutrition programs, as well as some of other national partners, to really start reaching producer groups on how we can kind of educate the producer side on farm to school and farm to summer. So those are some of our initiatives as we move forward.
Great, thanks, Sarah. And really exciting to see, and I think always something important to keep in mind is how we can develop those connections and relationships between our food programs and our farmers. And I think what's happening in Kentucky is a great example of that connectivity with the Department of Agriculture and the nutrition partners in the state. I want to give a big thank you to all of our panelists today, as well as all of our attendees. I think Farm to Summer is definitely going to be of growing interest, and hopefully this gives you all some great inspiration and ideas for what can happen in your state to grow Farm to Summer. Thanks for joining us, and we'll look forward to seeing you on our next NFSN Trending Topics webinars. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.